Circensis. Penem et circensis. Blah, blah. Gregor, do you know how to say this? Can you use the force to help me talk? Oh dear God. This is going on the internet, guys. Woo! Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookish Babbles, the podcast where we reread our favorite books and chat about them. I'm your host, Alyson, and without further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 42 of Bookish Babbles. Today we are talking about chapters 16 to 18 of Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, and we are wrapping up part 2 of the book. The end is near, and I'm not okay with it. Anyway, so what am I reading right now? I'm still reading What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. I'm so close to being done. I am also very close to being done with rereading Chain of Gold, and then I'm going to move on to the Chain of Iron audiobook because Chain of Thorns comes out this week. Holy shit, guys. I'm kind of glad in a way that I still have to reread Chain of Iron because then it puts off the end just a little bit longer, because while I'm excited at the same time, I don't want the series to end. I know it's going to break my heart, but this is the world we live in, so here we are. And I'm still aggressive, and I'm clearly still aggressively not in the mood to read my book club book this month. So, whoops. Sorry, guys. And yeah. Also, I recently went to Build-A-Bear with my friend Kate. I got Baby Yoda! And I have him with me right now. I'm literally cuddling with Baby Yoda right now as I'm recording this episode. I'm an adult, guys, I swear. I have a 401k and a Baby Yoda. Life is good. Anyway, so also just something else I want to rant about real quick. I think you'll appreciate, I hope. So the other day I was scrolling through TikTok, as you do, and I've been noticing that a Hunger Games renaissance is starting to happen on TikTok. Like, I'm seeing more videos show up on my For You page, just like how, we had the whole Twilight renaissance, and I got endless Twilight videos on my For You page. I'm still getting those, by the way, and I don't want them to stop. TikTok, please keep putting Twilight videos on my For You page. But yeah, I'm so happy that Hunger Games stuff is showing up on my For You page, which makes sense because, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes movie is coming out this year. Holy shit, I'm so excited for that. This is a good year, guys. But I got, this one video that came on my For You page. I thought it was a joke. I legit thought the guy was joking when he made this video, but nope. I'm pretty sure he was dead serious, and thankfully other people have stitched the video to call him out, because what the fuck, my dude. And I'm not going to share the creator's name because, well, for one, I don't want to draw any more attention to the video, because, the more views and interaction the guy gets on the video, then the more someone like him would just be encouraged to make content like that, for the clout, that kind of thing. But basically, it was a video arguing that Panem is a country with where conservative rurals are being oppressed by a queer-coded liberals in the big city, and that Katniss would have been part of the riot on January 6th in our present-day timeline. What the fuck? I am not joking. That is something a man on the internet said with his whole chest. All media literacy has left that man's brain. Did we watch the same movie or read the same book? Because, what, you're just going off aesthetics alone, my dude. What? I don't understand it. I do not understand. Anyway, see, my brain doesn't work anymore because of how stupid that thought is. Holy shit. Also, reminder that the people who were behind the January 6th riots are far right-wing leaning conservatives who are mostly of the Caucasian variety. Reminders. And I know Jennifer Lawrence plays Katniss in the movies, but in the books, Katniss is pretty indigenous coded. So again, just, reading comprehension, media literacy skills just left to that man's brain, and I hate it so much. But anyway, and also, especially considering that Katniss is very likely a descendant from a member of the Covey, and they were, freely wandering, living their lives until they were rounded up by the evil white man government and forced into to live in District 12. Totally something that, we never did in history to any of the Native American tribes. Anyway, moving on from that dark thought, let's just get to maybe we should get to the episode. Yeah, I just wanted to rant about that. And, if I have to know that someone out there thinks these thoughts about the Hunger Games, then y'all have to suffer with me. Okay, yeah, let's just get into the episode. So last week, Katniss goes to District 2 to, help with the war effort and everything, rally and unite the districts, do her Mockingjay thing. And she mostly goes after seeing how bad Peeta is. Gale is totally cool committing war crimes and just, casually throws out a plan where people gonna die. Seriously, he's like, yeah, whatever. Death, nothing new. And we end with Katniss getting shot on TV, so good times. This week, Katniss and Joanna become friends. I put a question mark at the end of that sentence. A wedding happens and everyone prepares to invade the capital. Woohoo! So with all that being said, let's dive into chapter 16. Okay, so we open the chapter with Katniss in the hospital in 13 because, where else would you be after getting shot? And she has a flashback to the last book. She remembers the time when Peeta comforted her after having a nightmare on the train during their victory tour. And, we had the iconic moment where Katniss was like, hey, Peeta, stay with me. And he said, always. Ugh, I just wrote in parentheses, Alyson feels all the Everlark feels. Oh boy. Okay. This is everyone's reminder that Peeta's always is a million times better than Snape's. Snape never loved Lily. He was obsessed with her. Just like how Gale never really loved Katniss. Peeta genuinely loves Katniss. When he's not hijacked, of course, but besides the point. And that's my Harry Potter rant for the day. And remember, fuck J.K. Rowling. And support the trans community. Anyway. So Katniss wakes up and is still in pain, as any of us would be. And we learned it hadn't been the man who she was talking to that ended up being the one that shot her. It was just someone else in the back of the crowd. And it was understandably chaotic after that. And moments after she wakes up, she has a visitor, Joanna Mason. I mean, she's been back for a minute, and that was like 2 episodes ago because she was rescued alongside Peeta and Annie. But this is the first time we see her not unconscious, and, the first conversation that she and Katniss have in this book. And they are wonderful and friendly, as always, to each other. And by that I mean Katniss has to remind herself that Joanna ultimately, saved her life in the arena, because her first instinct when she saw Joanna was, go away. You stabbed me. Though, to be fair, as much as I love her, I would probably also be scared if I woke up and Joanna Mason was, standing over me. And this is the first thing they say to each other. Katniss, I'm alive. Joanna, no kidding, brainless. I love them. And then Joanna starts to take some of Katniss's morphling since she's been cut off from her own supply because they don't want her to become addicted. And they probably have the right idea because as Joanna is giving herself morphling, she comments that the victors from 6 that we met in the Quell, who were, always high on morphling, may have had the right idea. So, yeah, maybe the doctors are thinking straight. Okay, and, Katniss also can't really tell Joanna no to stealing her morphling, especially since Joanna was, almost tortured to death. Because, Joanna and Katniss have so many great conversations, I'm just going to read this one they have on page 220. So it starts with Joanna's line where she says, "They've got this head doctor who comes around every day, supposed to be helping me recover, like some guy who spends his life in this rabbit warren's gonna fix me up. Complete idiot. At least 20 times a session he reminds me that I'm totally safe." I manage a smile. It's a truly stupid thing to say, especially to a victor, as if such a state of being ever existed anywhere for anyone. "How about you, Mockingjay? You feel totally safe?" "Oh yeah, right up until I got shot," I say. "Please, that bullet never even touched you. Cinna saw to that," she says. I think of the layers of protective armor in my Mockingjay outfit, but the pain came from somewhere. Broken ribs? Not even. Bruised pretty good. The impact ruptured your spleen. They couldn't repair it. She gives a dismissive wave of her hand. "Don't worry, you don't need one. And if you did, they'd find you one, wouldn't they? It's everybody's job to keep you alive." "Is that why you hate me?" I ask. "Partly," she admits. "Jealousy is certainly involved. I also think you're a little hard to swallow with your tacky romantic drama and your defender of the helpless act. Only it isn't an act, which makes you more unbearable. Please feel free to take this personally." "You should have been the Mockingjay. No one would have had to feed you lines," I say. "True, but no one likes me," she tells me. "They trusted you, though, to get me out," I remind her. "And they're afraid of you. Here, maybe, in the capital, you're the one they're scared of now." Gale appears in the doorway, and Joanna neatly unhooks herself and reattaches me to the morphling drip. "Your cousin's not afraid of me," she says confidently. She scoots off my bed and crosses the door, nudging Gale's leg with her hip as she passes him. "Are you gorgeous?" We can hear her laughter as she disappears down the hall. Another reason to love Joanna. She can make Gale uncomfortable. And, he shows up, making up for the last time that Katniss was in the hospital. Side note, I've also lost track of how many times Katniss has been in the hospital in just this book alone. Just like how I've lost track of the Gale red flags. And I know I just did a reading, but, like I said, a lot of good conversations happen in this book. So I'm just going to read the one that from there, page 221, between Katniss and Gale. So start with Gale saying to Katniss, "You've got to stop running straight into trouble." "I know, but someone blew up a mountain," I answer. Instead of pulling back, he leans in closer, searching my face. "You think I'm heartless." "I know you're not, but I won't tell you it's okay," I say. Now he draws back almost impatiently. "Katniss, what difference is there, really, between crushing our enemies in a mine or blowing them out of the sky with one of Beety's arrows? The result is the same." "I don't know. We were under attack in 8 for one thing. The hospital was under attack," I say. "Yes, and those hoverplanes came from District 2, he says. "So by taking them out, we prevented further attacks. But that kind of thinking... You could turn it into an argument for killing anyone at any time. You could justify sending kids into the Hunger Games to prevent the districts from getting out of line," I say. "I don't buy that," he tells me. "I do," I reply. "It must be those trips to the arena." "Fine. We know how to disagree," he says. "We always have. Maybe it's good. Between you and me, we've got District 2 now." "Really?" For a moment, a feeling of triumph flares up inside me. Then I think about the people on the square. Was there fighting after I was shot? Not much. The workers from the Nut turned on the Capitol soldiers. The rebels just sat back and watched, he says. Actually, the whole country just sat back and watched. Well, that's what they do best. It's just occurring to me right now that this may be some subtle foreshadowing for for Coin's ultimate plan in the end, because her whole thing is just kind of letting the districts do a lot of the brunt work to take the capital, so they'll be so worn out that 13's armory stays strong and they're truly the ones in power, because they just sat back and watched the rebels from the nut turn on the capital soldiers. Anyway, literally just thought of that now. Hold on, I need a sip of water. Diana. Anyway, where was I? So, I just love how Gale continues to do awful things, and kind of, he like, as a person, is currently justifying Snow's view of the world and humanity. It was deeply explored in Ballad. Short summary, good old Corio believes that without order, people will naturally do horrible, evil things because, we're all savages at heart. And kind of ironic that Gale is proving the point of someone that he hates so much. Just something to think about. Anyway, so rather than being allowed to get the bed rest that she's craving, the doctors want Katniss up and moving ASAP. The internal pain is pretty bad the first few days, even with the morphling, which she doesn't get as much of because she continues to let Joanna take whatever she likes, because, as we've established, she can't say no to Joanna. But part of the reason, too, that the doctors are trying to get Katniss up and moving is because, apparently if you get shot on live TV, rumors of your death start to run rampant. Who knew? So the camera crew comes in to get footage of Katniss recovering in the hospital. She shows off her stitches, congratulates the districts on all the good work they've done, yada, 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 the kind of stuff you expect from that kind of propo. And also takes walks as part of her recovery. Highly recommend. I know it's basic, but your therapist is right, guys. Walking is good for your physical and mental health. Who knew? So anyway, on one of the walks, Katniss is joined by Plutarch, and he gives her some updates. Now that they have District 2 as an ally, the rebels can take a little breather and get a chance to regroup, heal the wounded, reorganize all the troop, because new allies, like we said. And now history is repeating itself, because now the capital is cut off with no support or new supplies coming in, because the capital basically falls apart without the districts. And Plutarch goes on to explain to Katniss that without exploiting the districts, they can't provide the capital citizens with panem et circenses. Despite taking Latin, I can't pronounce this word, guys. Anyway, it translates to bread and circuses in Latin. Yeah. 3 years of Latin in high school, guys. Here I am. Anyway, and I love how this moment is for education, because, this is a series that's marketed toward young people, but it doesn't feel like a forced moment either, because, it's well established that the capital is meant to be like Rome, and Suzanne Collins was inspired by the story of Theseus for the concept of the Hunger Games. So the concept of panem et circuses, why do I bother trying? Bread and circuses is if you provide the population with food and entertainment, they're nice and distracted and give up their political responsibilities. And yeah, the capital is a perfect example of that. So much food that people can throw it up so they can eat more for fun. And the Hunger Games really are the ultimate entertainment. So as long as the capital can keep that up, then they can keep their little empire running as they please. Right now they can't do that. So things are going to fall apart real fast. And I can only imagine how stressed Snow is right now. And I'm happy about that. Because not only is he the leader of a nation that is now cut off from a steady flow of food and supplies, and the people are, bound to get very, very upset and angry. This is no doubt bringing back, all the memories from childhood during the dark days, when the capital was under siege and almost everyone was starving, and a young Coriolanus saw cannibalism. That scene is forever scarred into my memory. Thanks for that, Suzanne. But yeah, I'm willing to bet my next paycheck that Snow's never been to a single therapy session in his life. And when you don't, all the traumatic memories you've repressed they have a tendency to come back. And I can only imagine how, crazy it's all making him. Anyway, where are we? Okay, so yeah, Capital's struggling now, and Plutarch points out, the rebels now have control over the food, and he's about to arrange an entertainment that everyone will love. Drum roll! A wedding! Yay! And at first, Katniss is horrified because she thinks that Plutarch is going to try and stage some wedding between her and Peeta. But no, thankfully, we're not going there. It's Finnick and Annie's wedding. And this is probably like the happiest moment in the book, and I am here for it. Plutarch tells Katniss that all she has to do is show up and be happy. And Katniss tells him it's one of the few times she won't have to pretend. And naturally, there's a big flurry of activity and excitement in 13 now. Because it doesn't seem like weddings are really a thing there. Because I guess typically when a couple gets married in 13, they sign a piece of paper and are just assigned a new compartment to live in. Plutarch's idea of a wedding is, of course, hundreds of people dressed in their best and celebrating for 3 days. So they gotta do some compromises here. It also helps justify the wedding to Coin since, they can make a propo out of it. Plutarch still has to fight for every detail, and when Coin tells him, no to the dinner, entertainment, and alcohol, Plutarch snaps, being what's the fucking point of a propo if no one's having any fun? Everyone at 13 gets pretty excited since they don't really have many excuses to celebrate or even holidays, which is sad. Even in 12 they have New Year's and they celebrated Harvest, so even in 12 they took time for fun. Every kid shows up when it's announced that children are wanted to sing the District 4 wedding song, and no shortage of volunteers to help with the decorations. And there's just this overall excitement that something good is happening in the air, and I love it so much, guys. Katniss also volunteers to take Annie to her house in 12, where some of her clothes from the Victory Tour are, because Annie doesn't have anything, particularly pretty to wear to her own wedding, and Katniss also gets permission for her prep team to come with them, and this means a lot to them. And I have definitely been looking over this scene in the past. In general, I looked over the prep team a lot. One, because, they weren't in any of the movies, and I just did. I always tended to focus on Katniss in the past when reading the series, but it means a lot to the prep team that they get to look at the clothes that they helped Katniss get dressed in, because fashion means a lot to them. And in all the time they spent in 13, they've only been wearing these, plain gray jumpsuits. And I only recently have been starting to appreciate clothes and how important that self-expression through fashion is. And they're all about fashion. It is their passion, guys. And because I know, if I was suddenly taken to a place where I had no access to books or music, I'm pretty sure I would lose my mind. So if anything, the prep team is holding up a lot better than I would. There's also a small but important moment where, as they're looking at the clothes, when they remember Cinna, because of course Cinna made the dresses, and Cinna was obviously kind to Katniss and genuinely cares about her, but he was also kind to the prep team. He went out of his way to make sure they were rescued in the aftermath of Katniss, getting taken from the arena. So I miss Cinna so much. Anyway, we also get to spend a little time with Annie, someone we've heard so much about for the past, book and a half, but we haven't really gotten to interact with her very much. So far we, only briefly are, we're with her only briefly when she and Finnick are reunited. But now, Katniss takes a good good look at her and doesn't really describe Annie as mad so much, more like just a little off and, very traumatized, because no one in Panem has a good understanding of mental illness. But Katniss ultimately decides, you know what, Finnick loves her, good enough for me, because Katniss is a real friend. And the wedding is a hit, to say the least. There ends up being 300 guests. They do wear their everyday clothes, but at least, the bride and groom get to wear special outfits. Annie in the green dress they got from Katniss's house, and Finnick in one of Peeta's old suits that they altered for him. Dalton, the cattle guy from 10, officiates, and they get the children choir to sing. And perhaps the most important detail for me is that there's a fiddler playing from District 12 who had managed to get his instrument out of 12 before, it got destroyed. Clerk Carmine? No, because, what was it? I was listening to an episode of Into the Arena podcast a while back, and hi, Holly and Emily, if you're listening. And according to them, they said that in an Instagram live from one of either Suzanne or one of her editors, I forget. I don't even remember which episode they talked about this with, but I guess it was kind of low-key confirmed that the fiddler that's mentioned in this moment is Clerk Carmine of the Cubby in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I can't tell you how much it means to me to know that a member of the Cubby is still around in Katniss's time and gets to see the downfall of Snow. Oh my god. And the end of the games. And he still has his fiddle, guys. Poor Clerk. Because Clerk Carmine, he went through so much in Ballad. Because, his brother was a dick. And then ultimately, betrayed their family. When he was the reason Lucy Gray went into the games. And then he died. And then Lucy Gray disappeared. We don't know what happened. Unless, of course, she's right there as Greasy Say. But we don't know that for sure. So it means so much to me that he survived and was in 13 and gets to see the end of all this bullshit. I mean, I'm sure more bullshit comes after the war, but that's fine. He at least gets to see the end of the man who ruined one of the men who ruined his cousin's life, but I love it so much. Also makes me wonder what happened to Maud Ivory a bit. Maybe because, she and Clerk Carmine were fairly close in age, so we don't, because if we're all going with the theory that Maud Ivory is Katniss's grandmother, we can assume that she obviously died at some point. Did Katniss ever know her grandparents? Wait, were her grandparents on her father's side dead before? Why, after Mr. Everdeen died, did Mrs. Everdene's family, who owned the apothecary, never helped them? I don't know. Okay, I have so many questions now. I've gone off down the rabbit hole. Okay, where were we? So yes, once the vows are done at the wedding, yes, we're still at the wedding, Alyson. Everyone cheers, and the fiddler clerk, he starts playing a tune that people from 12 recognize, and a big group of them starts dancing, and Greasy Say is the one to kick off the dancing, grabs Gale and pulls him onto the dance floor. And again, if she really is Lucy Gray, then it just means so much more that she starts the dancing that her cousin is playing music for, and that it's for a propo that we know will drive Snow crazy, because Katniss and everyone from 12 having fun is bound to trigger him. Also, it would be great if Greasy Say was Lucy Gray and Snow was watching the propo, and they're bound to get a shot of Greasy Say for the propo because she's dancing with Gale, Katniss's cousin. And what if Snow somehow recognized her? That'd be kind of funny. Anyway, so, people file in the circle to dance. Katniss, at first, stays off to the side, just clapping along but then Joanne appears beside her and encourages her to dance because, what could drive Snow crazier than seeing Katniss dancing and having fun after being shot? So She finds Prim, they start dancing, and the two of them are pretty good because they have practiced dancing in their living room many a times growing up. And at some point, Katniss arranges a special dance for the bride and groom, and shortly after that, a huge wedding cake is wheeled out, and everyone is blown away by how amazing it looks. It's decorated to look ocean-themed, and it takes about a second for Katniss to realize that Peeta was the one who made it, because she recognizes his art style on cakes and realizes how much Haymitch has been keeping from her about Peeta's progress, because, if he can bake a cake and even decorate it up to his usual standards, then he's getting more mentally stable than we thought. Now, the Peeta, who they first met when they brought to 13, he couldn't have done that. And continuing to prove that Haymitch really does know Katniss well, he appears beside her and, pulls her aside to talk to her. Katniss is naturally a bit panicky and irritated, asking if Peeta is free to roam the place, and which, she has every right to feel on edge about. But Haymitch, assures her that Peeta is still being closely watched. And Haymitch also tells her that there are times when Peeta seems rational, and then there's things set him off, and baking the cake was when he seemed the most like his old self. He could even hold a conversation with Haymitch. Peeta was understandably angry with Haymitch, but for the right reasons. Those reasons being not telling him about the rebel plan, yada yada. And also, Peeta wants to talk to Katniss, and this makes Katniss feel not great, because remember, her plan was to go to the Capitol, kill Snow, and then get taken out while doing it. And, getting shot was just a setback. So here we are now, and Katniss can't say no to Peeta's request, no matter how much she wants to. So at midnight, Katniss finds herself outside Peeta's hospital room door while she's given the go-ahead to go in Peeta's room. He's strapped to the bed, understandably. When he says hi to her, he almost sounds like himself, though he's still a bit on edge. And you know what? I'll just read their conversation from there to the end of the chapter, because it's the first real conversation the two of them have for the book, so it's fairly important. So it starts with Katniss saying, "Haymitch said you wanted to talk to me, I say. Look at you, for starters. It's like he's waiting for me to transform into a hybrid drooling wolf right before his eyes. He stares so long I find myself casting furtive glances at the one-way glass, hoping for some direction from Haymitch, but my earpiece stays silent. You're not very big, are you? Or particularly pretty. I know he's been through hell and back, and yet somehow the observation rubs me the wrong way. Well, you've looked better." Haymitch's advice to back off gets muffled by Peeta's laughter. And not even remotely nice to say that to me after all I've been through. Yeah, we've all been through a lot, and you're the one who was known for being nice, not me. I'm doing everything wrong. I don't know why I feel so defensive. He's been tortured. He's been hijacked. What's wrong with me? Suddenly I think I might start screaming at him. I'm not even sure about what, so I decide to get out of here. Look, I don't feel well. Maybe I'll drop by tomorrow. I've just reached the door when his voice stops me. Katniss, I remember about the bread. The bread. Our one moment of real connection before the Hunger Games. They showed you the tape of me talking about it, I say. No. Is there a tape of you talking about it? Why didn't the Capitol use it against me? He asks. I made it the day you were rescued, I answer. The pain in my chest wraps around my ribs like a vice. The dancing was a mistake. So, what do you remember? You, in the rain, he says softly. Digging in our trash bins, burning the bread, my mother hitting me, taking the bread out for the pig, but then giving it to you instead. That's it. That's what happened, I say. The next day after school, I wanted to thank you, but I didn't know how. We were outside at the end of the day. I tried to catch your eye. You looked away, and then, for some reason, I think you picked a dandelion. I nod. He does remember. I've never spoken about that moment aloud. I must have loved you a lot. You did. My voice catches and I pretend to cough. And did you love me? He asks. I keep my eyes on the tile floor. Everyone says I did. Everyone says that's why Snow had you tortured to break me. That's not an answer, he tells me. I don't know what to think when they show me some of the tapes. In that first arena, it looked like you tried to kill me with those tracker jackers. I was trying to kill all of you, I say. You had me treed. Later, there's a lot of kissing. Didn't seem very genuine on your part. Did you like kissing me? Sometimes, I admit. You know people are watching us now? I know. What about Gale? He continues. My anger's returning. I don't care about his recovery. This isn't the business of the people behind the glass. He's not a bad kisser either, I say shortly. And it was okay with both of us? You kissing the other, he asks. No, it wasn't okay with either of you, but I wasn't asking your permission, I tell him. Peeta laughs again, coldly, dismissively. Well, you're a piece of work, aren't you? Hamish doesn't protest when I walk out. Down the hall, through the beehive of compartments, find a warm pipe to hide behind in a laundry room. It takes a long time before I get to the bottom of why I'm so upset. When I do, it's almost too mortifying to admit. All those months of taking for granted that Peeta thought I was wonderful are over. Finally, he can see me for who I really am. Violent, distrustful, manipulative, deadly. And I hate him for it. First of all, Katniss, I think you're being way too hard on yourself. And second, it's time for break. We'll unpack all this when we come back. And we're back. So, for once, we don't pick up right where we left off. We have a little bit of a time jump. We open to Katniss being blindsided by the news that she wasn't clear to go to the capital for the invasion, which, kind of gets in the way of her plans to kill Snow. Katniss goes straight down to command as soon as she gets the news. Coin tells her that, as the Mockingjay, her primary job, unifying the districts against the capital, and it's accomplished. She's done that. And so there's no real need for her to go to the capital, and they'll fly her in for the surrender when the invasion's over. Katniss argues that, she's their best shot, literally, she's a great shot. So she'd be really helpful, with the whole fighting. And besides, Gale is going, though Gale hasn't missed any of his classes and training, unlike some people. Katniss. Even Boggs takes Coin's side on this. After all, Katniss may be a victor, but she hasn't been properly trained as a soldier. And what do you know? That's what you need to fight a war. Soldiers. What a concept. In the end, Coin tells Katniss that if she manages, to whip herself into shape over the next 3 weeks, she could possibly be authorized to go. And, Katniss takes that and runs with it. She goes back to the hospital, tells Joanna, who also wants to train with Katniss, because according to her, in her own words, fine, I'll train, but I'm going to the stinking capital if I have to kill a crew and fly there myself. And Katniss comments something about how, well, at least I'll have a ride. Also, personally, I think Joanna should have dropped an F-bomb right about there, but whatever, moving on. When Katniss and Joanna report to class, they're a little mortified to find themselves placed in a class with a bunch of 14-year-olds, and even worse to realize that the 14-year-olds are in better shape, considering Katniss and Joanna are victors who survived 2 separate arenas each. Joanna also makes sure to, shout motivational insults to keep Katniss moving, but it still isn't enough to get Katniss through the 5-mile run. She only makes it a mile, which is still better than I would do. Remember back in school when they would, make us run a mile in gym class and we would get graded for it? I'm pretty sure that should classify as a form of child abuse, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, part of the reason Katniss is having such a hard time running is because, her ribs are still pretty bruised badly. Soldier York, her instructor, does recommend Katniss for a special treatment so her ribs can heal faster, though won't be pleasant. Katniss doesn't care because, as we've established, she's desperate to get to the capital. 24 needle jabs later, and Katniss is in for a poor night's sleep and a rough couple of days as a result. Joanna's also fighting off withdrawal symptoms from lack of morphling, and she's firing every curse and profanity she has at Katniss, so neither of them do so hot that night. By morning, Katniss is sure she can't get up and make it to training, and Joanna says something that's actually quite motivating. "You can do it. We both can. We're victors, remember? We're the ones who can survive anything they throw at us." She still snarls when she says it, but it's exactly what Katniss needs to hear, apparently, because they both make it through the day. Though Joanna doesn't do so great with the fact that they have to run through the rain. We'll unpack that later. And they still end up vomiting their lunch. After that, they learn to assemble their guns, although when York isn't looking, Katniss has to assemble Joanna's for her because her hands are shaking so badly. And later, Katniss is happy to be at the shooting range because, something she's actually good at. Later, when they go back to the hospital, Joanna declares that they have to stop living there because then people will keep viewing them as patients. Joanna can only get discharged if she has a roommate, so Katniss volunteers to live with her. That night, the two of them move into a compartment across the hall from Prim and Mrs. Everdeen, who, agree to keep an eye on them, of course. I'm trying to promise not to read every single conversation Katniss and Joanna have, but it's hard not to. So on page 239, after Katniss gets out of the shower and sees Joanna looking through her stuff, and Joanna finds the pearl, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's here!" And from the top of page 239, Katniss says, "Yeah, I say, made it through somehow. I don't want to talk about Peeta. One of the best things about training is it keeps me from thinking of him. Haymitch says he's getting better," she says. "Maybe, but he's changed," I say. "So have you. So have I, and Finnick, and Haymitch, and Beetee. Don't get me started on Annie Cresta. The arena messed us all up pretty good, don't you think? Or do you still feel like the girl who volunteered for your sister?" she asked me. "No," I say. "That's the one thing I think my doctor might be right about. There's no going back, so we might as well get on with things." She neatly returns my keepsakes to the drawer and climbs into bed across from me just as the lights go out. "You're not afraid I'll kill you tonight?" "Like I couldn't take you," I answer. Then we laugh, since both our bodies are so wrecked, it would be a miracle if we could get up the next day. But we do. Each morning we do. And by the end of the week, my ribs feel almost like new, and Joanna can assemble her rifle without help. Also, that same day, when they're doing well and Soldier York praises them, they go to lunch and they meet up with Gale, and for lunch there's beef stew. And according to Greasy Say, it's real beef from District 10. And everyone is overall in a good mood, as good food tends to do to people. And they join Deli, Annie, and Finnick for lunch. And Finnick is the happiest we've ever seen him and keeps holding on to Annie's hand. So cue me going off in the corner to cry. Anyway, we get some exposition on how Deli has really grown on Katniss and that she's also her biggest defender whenever Peeta has one of his episodes and goes on to call Katniss horrible things, and always taking her side and blaming the Capitol's torture on Peeta's reactions to Katniss. At some point during the meal, while Finnick is, telling some funny story about a turtle, I think, they're approached by someone, and it's Peeta. "What do you know? We were just thinking about you, buddy old pal." He's still flanked by 2 guards, but still, he's there, holding his tray awkwardly because his hands are, shackled because he's not deemed trustworthy yet, but still there. And he has permission to sit with them, and Joanna says, of course he can, that they're old friends since they had adjoining cells in the Capitol and were very familiar with each other's screams. This comment, of course, does not go over well with Annie. She covers her ears and exits reality, as Katniss puts it. Finnick isn't thrilled with Joanna, obviously, but all she says to that is that, her head doctor, told her not to censor her thoughts. It's part of her therapy, which may or may not be true, Though I have a feeling Joanna doesn't need a doctor to tell her to speak her mind. There's understandably a moment of awkward silence. Finnick calms Annie down, and Deli eventually breaks the silence by telling Annie that Peeta was the one who had made her wedding cake. Annie thanks Peeta, and when he says, "You're welcome," Katniss notices that the old gentleness that used to be in his voice is suddenly there. Finnick and Annie then leave to go for a walk, and Peeta makes a strange comment. So it's on page 242. Peeta says, "You be nice to her, Finnick, or I might try and take her away from you." And then to continue, book says, "It could be a joke if the tone wasn't so cold. Everything I conveys is wrong. The open distrust of Finnick, the implication that Peeta has his eye on Annie, that Annie could desert Finnick, that I do not even exist." "Oh, Peeta," says Finnick lightly, "don't make me sorry I restarted your heart." He then leads Annie away after giving me a concerned glance. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this too, Katniss. So we'll just move on, I guess. Deli defends Finnick by reminding Peeta that Finnick really did save his life, and all Peeta says is that, it was for Katniss and the rebellion, so he actually doesn't owe Finnick anything, which is how you know Peeta isn't really of sound in mind right now. More harsh words are exchanged. Peeta accuses Katniss and Gale of being a couple now. Pretty sure Joanna's enjoying the chaos. I don't feel like going too deep into it. Gale walks Katniss back to her room. Joanna comes back and tells Katniss she missed Deli yelling at Peeta for how rude he was to her. Peeta started talking to himself like he was arguing with someone. So shortly after that, the guards had to take him away. And Joanna got to finish his stew. So yeah, Joanna thrived the most from that whole situation. And basically the chapter ends with Katniss telling us she's having more nightmares. So yeah, break time. And we are back. So we open this chapter with a mini training montage. We always love those. Katniss has completely thrown herself into training. She's moved into an additional class, and she's hoping that it's a sign that they're seriously considering her to join the fight in the Capitol. In the class, they train in what they call the block, which is meant to be which is basically a really good simulator, so they can have, good idea of what fighting in the Capitol will be like, and, have everything go wrong so they can get used to everything going wrong, because, typically everything goes wrong when you're in a battle. Landmines going off, snipers appearing out of nowhere, your squad leader suddenly dying, being lured into a trap, all that fun stuff. At some point, they release a gas, and Katniss and Joanna are the only ones in their squad who get their gas masks on in time, and the rest get knocked out for 10 minutes. Supposedly the gas is harmless, but it gives Katniss a wicked headache for the rest of the day. And by the way, that is a quote from the book. Katniss actually says wicked headache in the narration. So Katniss is from Boston, confirmed. Anyway, so during the training, Cressida and the crew film Katniss because, of course, the Mockingjay training for battle makes good TV. Finnick and Gale are being filmed too. Then Peeta joins them for morning workouts too, for filming purposes, because, got to make it clear that Peeta is squarely on the rebel side now. Plutarch assures Katniss that it's all for the camera, it's not really actually working with any weapons, and tells Katniss that Alla Penem is starting to wonder about her and Peeta. They want updates on the happy reunion. Katniss walks away from the conversation as soon as Plutarch suggests they film her and Peeta, looking happy to be back together and all lovey-dovey. Then a few days before the first set of troops are set out to... Take two. Then, a few days before the first set of troops are set to move out, York tells Katniss and Joanna that she recommended them for the exam. So, yay! There are 4 parts to the exam. Obstacle course to test your physical abilities, of course. written part for tactics, a weapons proficiency test, and a stimulated combat test in the block. For the last part, you go through it alone, and it's meant to test your weaknesses. When it's Katniss's turn, she finds herself in an ambush situation. Katniss gets away and heads towards the rendezvous point, and she realizes that it's all just a bit too easy. She then notices a chance to set off an explosion when she sees, some gasoline and thinks, that must be her test. But then she gets orders via her earpiece to hit the ground. And Katniss realizes that this is actually meant to be her test because she's terrible at taking orders. So for once, she listens to her commanding officers and she passes. Yay! When Katniss exits the block, she's congratulated, assigned to Squad 451, and is told to report to command. She is so excited that she passed that at first, Katniss doesn't realize how odd it is that she's going to command, that she should be getting her hair buzzed like everyone else who gets cleared for combat. When she gets to command, she finds out that she's with Boggs. Squad 451 is a special unit of sharpshooters. Not only is Boggs her squad leader, but Finnick and Gale are there too. Then Plutarch comes in to talk to them, and there may or may not be more to this squad than just, being good shots. Now, Plutarch gives a presentation with a holographic image that shows a map of the capital city and explains that there are pods littered throughout the city, which will set off things like explosions, mutts, generally deadly traps meant to kill you, all the fun stuff like that. This is the most recent information they have on where the pods are, but even then it might not be enough since, new pods could have been made. And Katniss has an interesting observation to make about the whole thing. It's on page 251. Excuse me. I'm unaware that my feet are moving to the table until I'm inches from the holograph. My hand reaches in and cups a rapidly blinking green light. Someone joins me, his body tense. Finnick, of course, because only Victor would see what I see so immediately. The arena, laced with pods controlled by game makers. Finnick's fingers caress a steady red glow over a doorway. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice is quiet, but mine rings through the room. Let the 76 Hunger Games begin. I laugh, quickly, before anyone has time to register what lies beneath the words I have just uttered. Before eyebrows are raised, objections uttered, two and two are put together, and the solution is that I should be kept as far away from the capital as possible. Because an angry, independently thinking Victor with a layer of psychological scar tissue too thick to penetrate is maybe the last person you want in your squad. I don't even know why you bothered to put Finnick and me through training, Plutarch, I say. Yeah, we're already the two best-equipped soldiers you have, Finnick adds cockily. Do not think that fact escapes me, he says with an impatient wave. Now back in line, soldiers O'Dare and Everdeen. I have a presentation to finish. And to think people complained that this book and the movies were boring because there were no Hunger Games. It's literally spelled out right here. Game makers literally designed those pods. Katniss and Finnick are practically going into a third arena. Holy shit, how are they holding it together right now? Anyway, so Katniss doesn't have to get a haircut because the Mockingjay needs to always look conventionally good, I guess, because never know when she needs to be on camera. When they're dismissed, Katniss and Finnick naturally talk, and this is on page 252. And it starts with Finnick saying, what will I tell Annie, he says under his breath. Nothing, I answer. That's what my mother and sister will be hearing from me. Bad enough that we know we're heading back into a fully equipped arena. No use dropping it on our loved ones. If she sees that holograph, he begins, she won't. It's classified information. It must be, I say. Anyway, it's not like in actual games. Any number of people will survive. We're just overreacting because, well, you know why. You still want to go, don't you? Of course, I want to destroy Snow as much as you do, he says. It won't be like the others, I say firmly, trying to convince myself as well. Then the real beauty of the situation dawns on me. This time, Snow will be a player too. I mean, in a weird way, it is refreshing because Katniss knows that she can truly trust her allies she's fighting with. She won't have to question if they'll kill her in her sleep like she did in the arena. So they're then cut off from continuing their conversation by Haymitch. He tells them that Joanna was back in the hospital because she failed her test on the block, because her test basically was they flooded the street and that set her off, because that's how essentially she was tortured in the Capitol. They would soak her in water before electrocuting her, so yikes. So, and, finally dawns on Katniss. She understands why Joanna avoids showering most of the time. And Haymitch also comments that Plutarch won't be happy because, one less victor to film at the invasion. Specifically, young and attractive ones, because Haymitch and Beatty don't quite make the cut in the young and attractive category. I mean, I disagree, but moving on, whatever. Katniss decides something nice to do for Joanna. So during reflection time, Katniss is given permission to go into the woods. When she comes back, she visits Joanna in the hospital and gives her a bag full of pine needles meant to remind her of home. And this really does seem to touch Joanna, and this is probably the most vulnerable and least abrasive we've ever seen her. And Joanna makes Katniss swear on her family that she will kill Snow. Days go by and Katniss trains with her squad, spending most of their time on the shooting range. Katniss mostly has to practice with guns, but they also get to practice with their special weapons, like Katniss's Mockingjay, bow and arrow. Also, Finnick's Triton can come back to him with the press of a button, which is cool. Then we get a breakdown of the rest of Squad 451. We got Jackson, who she's Boggs' second in command. The two League sisters, who we call League 1 and 2, and they're practically identical. And two guys named Holmes and Mitchell, and all of them are incredible sharpshooters. On the morning that Plutarch joins them, it becomes clear what their status is. Basically, they've been handpicked to be on camera for the invasion propos. They'll travel well behind the front lines. Finnick and Gale grumble that they won't, get to do actual fighting. Katniss keeps quiet, knowing that, she's got to keep quiet so she can get to the Capitol and then find a moment to break away so she can go on her solo quest, her solo murder quest. Plutarch also assures them that there will be plenty of real targets to hit, and tells them to try not to get blown up since they would be a pain to replace. Real comforting, Plutarch. And then the next morning, Katniss says goodbye to her family without, telling them all the dangerous details, of course. And, for no particular reason whatsoever, I'm gonna read, brief conversation Katniss has with Prim before she leaves, because, totally not important or anything. Okay, you got this, Alyson. Okay, so it starts with Katniss saying, don't worry, I'll be perfectly safe. I'm not even a real soldier, just one of Plutarch's televised puppets, I reassure her. Prim walks me as far as the hospital door. How do you feel? Better knowing you're somewhere Snow can't reach you, I say. Next time we see each other, we'll be free of him, says Prim firmly. Then she throws her arms around my neck. Be careful. I'm not okay, guys. Anyway, so Katniss thinks about saying goodbye to Peeta, but ultimately decides not to. She does pocket the pearl, though. Again, I'm not okay. The hovercraft takes them to 12, where there are cargo trains ready to take everyone to the Capitol. It takes a couple days to get there. They're dropped near the tunnels leading to the Capitol. They feel weirdly exposed camping some in the open, but most of the air fleet has been destroyed inside the nut, so yay. Also, we are so close to the end and the end of part 2, so you know what that means. Time for reading. So I'm starting on page 259. After 3 days, much of Squad 451 risks deserting out of boredom. Cressida and her team take shots of us firing. They tell us we're part of the disinformation team. If the rebels only shoot Plutarch's pause, it will take the capital about 2 minutes to realize we have the holograph. So there's a lot of time spent shattering things that don't matter, to throw them off the scent. Mostly we just add to the piles of rainbow glass that's been blown off the exteriors, off the candy-colored buildings. I suspect they're intercutting this footage with the destruction of significant capital targets. Once in a while, it seems a real sharpshooter services are needed. 8 hands go up, but Gale, Finnick, and I are never chosen. It's your own fault for being so camera-ready, I tell Gale. If looks could kill. I don't think they quite know what to do with the 3 of us. Particularly me. I have my Mockingjay outfit with me, but I've only been taped in my uniform. Sometimes I use a gun. Sometimes they ask me to shoot with my bow and arrows. It's as if they don't want to entirely lose the Mockingjay, but they want to downgrade my role to foot soldier. Since I don't care, it's amusing rather than upsetting to imagine the arguments going on back in 13. While I outwardly express disconnect about our lack of any real participation, I'm busy with my own agenda. Each of us has a paper map of the capital. The city forms in almost perfect square. Lines divide the map into smaller squares with letters along the top and numbers down the side to form a grid. I consume this, noting every intersection and side street, but it's remedial stuff. The commanders are here working off Plutarch's holograph. Each has a handheld contraption called a holo that produces images like I saw in Command. They can zoom into any area of the grid and see what pods await them. The holo is an independent unit, a glorified map really, since it can neither send nor receive signals, but it's far superior to my paper version. A holo is activated by a specific commander's voice giving his or her name. Once it's working, it responds to the other voices in the squadron, so if, say, Boggs were killed or severely disabled, someone could take over. If anyone in the squad repeats Nightlock 3 times in a row, the holo will explode, blowing everything in a 5-yard radius sky high. This is for security reasons in the event of capture. It's understood that we would all do this without hesitation. So what I need to do is steal Boggs' activated holo and clear out before he notices. I think it would be easier to steal his teeth. On the 4th morning, Soldier Leak 2 hits a mislabeled pod. It doesn't unleash a swarm of mutations, which the rebels are prepared for, but shoots out a sunburst of metal darts. One finds her brain. She's gone before the mechs can reach her. Plutarch promises a speedy replacement. The following evening, the newest member of our squad arrives. With no manacles, no guards, strolling out of the train station with his gun swinging from the strap over his shoulder. There's a shock of confusion, resistance, but 451 is stamped on the back of Peta's hand in fresh ink. Boggs relieves him of his weapons and goes to make a call. It won't matter, Peta tells the rest of us. The president assigned me herself. She decided the propos needed some heating up. Maybe they do, but if Coin sent Peta here, she's decided something else as well. That I'm of more use to her dead than alive. So, big old ding on the District 13, specifically Coin red flag counter. Yay! Oh boy. So yeah, that's the end of part 2. We are going to talk about chapters, 19 to 21. I can count. 19 to 21 next time. So, thank you all for listening and putting up with me and my disorganized chaos. It's fine. Like, subscribe, leave a review. If you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it out loud on the show. And if you have any thoughts about, this week's episode, any previous episodes, or any parts I've talked about in these books, or even the next upcoming episode, feel free to message me on Instagram And if you want me to share your thoughts on the show, message me and let me know, or email me. All that information is in the show notes. And I apologize for who I will be, because, in less than 24 hours, Chain of Thorns is out, and I will be a mess. So good luck with me, y'all. So anyway, I hope you all have a great day/night. Thank you again so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!